Welcome back to my channel. A real quick read. We're doing our book club reading the Trilateral Commission. It's gonna be a quick video, but because the New World Order is here. It ain't coming, it's here. Okay, here we go. The post-war capitalist world, as we have seen, was based on despotism, benevolent perhaps, but the United States dominated the capitalist world, and the concessions and favors bestowed on its friends across the water were, after all, in its strategic interest. But little by little, the king's favors enriched the couriers, and the specter of an economic palace revolt became increasingly menacing. We have reviewed this process in trade and investment fields. Let us now look at the cog in the machine that spelled its ultimate doom. Even while World War II raged, U.S. leaders began to plan for the post war reconstruction of the international economic system. The U.S. vision of the post war capitalist world, of course, had the United States as leader and ruler. Facts. Weakened as they were by war effort, other capitalist powers, notably Britain, were unable to resist plans for a Pax America. In contest, in July 1944, at a conference of 44 nations in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the Anglo-American blueprint for the international monetary system was approved. Although some of the actual terms of the agreement on the post-war monetary system approved at Bretton Woods were unworkable, notably the insufficient provisions for exchange rate adjustments as needed and the lack of adequate provisions for an incentive in gold reserves. Let me get my face over here. By 1961, the International Monetary System. And see, the International Monetary Fund is funded and is in control by the Rothschilds, started that, along with the World Health Organization and the World Bank. Those are all owned and controlled by the Rothschilds. Was enforced along the general lines of the 1944 agreement. The full workings of the system are complex and beyond the scope of this essay, but we must look at the general outline. At the center of the international monetary solar system shone the dollar. Around its orbit, the various national currencies. Their relationship to each other was fixed, defined by their relations to the American sun. International transactions were carried out almost exclusively in dollars, just like buying. Oh, thank you. I'm just doing a quick video before I go out. Okay, cool. Um, just as the dollar is known as the petrodollar, because most oil is traded in dollars, and then BRICS came along and wanted to change that. But Donald Trump, when he said he is not letting the dollar collapse, and he went toe to toe with BRICS nations. So it's kind of in a standstill at this point. This was fine so long as the sun was the largest, most stable body in the system, America. But as the economics of the Western Europe, especially Germany and Japan, grew faster than that of the central body, the laws of gravity began to assert themselves. The German mark and yen became even stronger and challenged the hegemony of the dollar. And by the late 1960s, the system could no longer be expected to perform and as a surrogate for gold. Similarly, the protective trade barriers were increasingly cumbersome for international finance. For a weakened U.S. economy, especially, the EEC's relative protectionism, once a condition for European reconstruction, seemed unwarranted in a view of Western Europe's considerable economic strength. At the same time, the United States, in large part because of the enormous expense of maintaining and policing a global empire, had begun to accumulate a huge balance of payments deficit. Facts, it wasn't $1 trillion back then. The resulting overhang of dollars began to distort the entire structure of the international financial and monetary markets by the late 1960s. International financiers agreed that reform was needed and no national currency could completely dominate the system, and that national currency should be pegged to correspond to their relative and interdependent strengths in the field in a fluid manner. By 1970, serious discussion was underway to accomplish these and other changes while continuing to move toward a freer trade relation. But these laborious discussions were destined to be destroyed by the increasingly serious economic crisis of the early 70s. Um, Therapy, don't you remember under Carter standing in line trying to get gas? It was so long to get, so hard to get gas. I remember as a kid, I was in elementary school, and my grandma would be in, we would be in line for hours to get gas. In August 1971, the storm broke in the form of President Richard Nixon's new economic policy. Its international components, referred to as the Nixon shocks, were aimed at dramatically altering the international monetary and trade system. On the monetary front, Nixon suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Roosevelt took us off the backing of the gold, and Nixon finished us off. hmm This step, a clear violation of the Articles Agreement of the International Monetary Fund, was meant to achieve effective devaluation of the dollar relative to other currencies. With the dollar devalued, U.S. made goods cost less to foreigners, and foreign made goods would be less competitive in the U.S. market. With the dollar equivalent to four German marks, for instance, a US made $10 lamp will cost Germany 40 marks. If the dollar were devalued to 3 marks, the same lamp would sell for only 30 marks in Germany, with no particular effort on the part of the US manufacturer necessary. Devaluation then was seen by Nixon as a way to improve the position of the U.S. exporters and of domestic U.S. manufacturers competing with foreign imports. On the trademark, too, Nixon stuck out at the foreign firms competing with U.S. manufacturers for U.S. market, openly disregarding U.S. obligations under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. He slapped a 10% surcharge on most imports into the United States. Through the fall of 1971, Nixon stepped up attack on imports by virtually ordering Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong to reduce the pace of their imports of textiles into the United States. Trump wasn't the first one doing tariff. This country, before 1930, before the Illuminati really got control of it, tariffs paid for everything before 1930. And Woodrow Wilson had the meeting at Jekyll Island, which started the Federal Reserve Bank owned by the Rothschilds, the IRS, These are two private institutions, not part of the government, owned by the Rothschilds. Started the Rothschild, even started the FBI. So there you have it. But before that, tears paid for everything. Okay, let me get back to this. Okay, Japan and the common market were also asked in those certain terms to allow U.S. goods to be sold at more competitive prices in their respective marketplaces. The attack was successful. By spring of 1972, Japan and other Asian nations had agreed to slow the growth of the U.S. sales of synthetic fibers, and both Japan and the EEC had agreed to relax their trade barriers to many U.S. products. Oh, wait a minute. Exactly, and that's exactly what I just said. Exactly, therapy. That's why I love you. Exactly. Nixon's methods were, however, extremely upsetting to the major representative of transitional capital interests, Philip H. Treacy, Assistant Secretary of the State of Economic Affairs since 1969, left the administration and went to work for Brookings Institution and of transnational theory. After 27 years in the State Department, J. Robert Schuschel, U.S. Ambassador to European Community since 1966, left his post in 1972 and began to write the Council of Foreign Relations. Oh, we're going to get off into that. They, they started before the Trilateral Commission, and they do control. That's the shadow government, the government they don't talk about, the Council of Foreign Relations. And perhaps more significant, C. Fred Bernstein, a dynamic, brilliant darling of financial capitalists, deserted his post as assistant for international economic affairs to Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, the Illuminati himself, okay, along with George Soros, returned to the Brookings Institution and the Council of Foreign Relations and embarked on a campaign to point out the destructive nature of Nixon. Shots in articles in the Washington Post, the New York Times, Foreign Policy and Foreign Affairs, an article written in November 1971 says this. In the summer of 1971, Nixon and Secretary Connally re- revolutionized U.S. foreign economic policy. In so doing, they promoted a protectionist trend which raises questions about the future of the U.S. economy at least as fundamentally as those raised by the abrupt adoption of wage price controls. In so doing, they have also encouraged a disastrous isolationist trend which raises questions about the future of U.S. foreign policy. Both the U.S. economy and U.S. foreign policy for the relevant future hang in the balance. Nixon terminated the convertibility of the dollar, shattering the linchpin of international monetary system on whose smooth function the world economy depends. He imposed an import surcharge, proposed both the most sweeping U.S. export subsidy in history, and discriminated against foreign machinery by making it ineligible for the drop development credit, plunging East Asia into voluntary restraint agreements on textiles, and sought to extend and tighten the existing voluntary agreement on steel, completely revising the traditional position of the U.S. administrations in resisting protectionism and leading the world toward ever freer trade. He violated the letter and the spirit of the ringing international law in both monetary and trade fields. See, and when he did that, all of a sudden, here come Watergate. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The bankers are the real government. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We in total agreement about that. Okay, I'm gonna finish this and then I'm gonna go because this is a short video. Go to the second job. In September 1971, Bernstein, along with Richard Cooper and Richard Gardner, Bernstein became Assistant Secretary of Treasury for International Affairs, Cooper Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs, and Gardner Ambassador to Italy under Carter. In the summer of 1971, President, oh no, I said that, didn't I? Oh yeah, okay. There was a consensus among the non-government witnesses that the tactics pursued in behalf of the new economic policy embroidered a high-risk strategy that could lead to the first international trade war since the 1930s. Look, it's the same game. The game don't change, just the people in the time. Same thing they saying about Trump tears, they said about Nixon. There was a considerable body of opinion that the method of approach of the new economic policy unnecessarily harmed U.S. international relations. Most significant was the apparent absence of any prior consultation with foreign nations, including our closest allies, on the measures announced. Such a procedure undermines the basis for durable bilateral, multilateral relations of trust, cooperation between countries and international organizations. Let me see how far I got. Okay. I think this book is so good. This book was written 1980, 2025. Ain't nothing changed. Not a damn thing has changed. Walter Schul, then West Germany's foreign minister, warned by its decisions on trade policy, the United States may bring about the disintegration of the Western world. Same shit they said to Trump. The Nixon shocks, in fact, was a unilateral attempt to reassert U.S. economic dominance over Japan and Western Europe. Alliances, to be sure, were important, but the key that Western Europe and Japan were on their own, open to U.S. attack or reconciliation as needed. Nixon was following the policy of economic nationalism. Damn, you can't make this up. Damn, 1980, 2025. Look at this. This book was written in 1980 when I say that. Damn. Same thing. Nixon was following a policy of economic nationalism promoted by more domestically based and nationally oriented industrial interests. By and large, the major political source of the recent resurgence of economic nationalism, particularly in the United States, have been relatively immobile domestic groups pressing the government for protection of their share of welfare in the competition with transnational competitors. It is not a situation in which foreign economic policy is used to enhance state power, welfare, particularly for groups whose interests are hurt by increasingly international transactions, exert strong pressure on foreign economic policy, regardless of the implications of interstate power or even the aggravated welfare of the national society. Okay, this is going to be the last. On the face of it, Nixon's view might seem realistic assessment of imperialism rivalries in the midst of severe economic and political crisis. In fact, the splintering of the industrial capitalist nations pose serious threat to the international players. Same thing, Trump, Nixon. Wow. The transnational finances and corporations with vested interest in free trade, free investment, and a fluidly interdependent capitalism economy worldwide in which money was free to come, go, and make more money as it pleased. And I'm going to end that right there. This is our book club, the Trilateral Commission. All right, like, share, subscribe. Going to the second job. Appreciate y'all. This is just a quick video.